Welcome back to another episode of the Just in Time podcast. I'm your host, Justin, and this is my guest, Will. We'll be talking about chapters 13 and 14, finishing up a legendary championship and coaching career.
All right, brother. Listen,
The great Skip Bertman.
just we always talk about coaching and adaptability. Just the NCAA did
Yeah.
not want LSU to win, seemingly, because they took away the
Nope.
gorilla ball era. They expanded the postseason. They got sick and tired of the championship goals. I say, we find a way. We always find a way.
We always find a way.
And like I said, when we cut out, even though we dipped to 18 and 11, it was a struggle that year because we went from like almost 200 homers to down to barely over 100. But we still made a super regional, but we got swept by Alabama on the road. And like you had brought up earlier, Skip had health issues during that time, because he had passed out on one of the plane rides. It was just a lot of
Yeah.
stress on his body.
I think they said, that one, they were on that plane ride and he said something. I knew that SOB Terrio would be death to me one day.
My gosh, man. Yeah, man. It's just like
This when Ryan Terrio hit that team, it was always Ryan Terrio was gonna kill Skip.
the riot for a reason.
Huh?
The riot. That's the origin story right there. That's the origin
Yep.
story. Come on now. Man, that is funny. It's just like but even like going into like later on, just once again the game adapted back to its roots as far as like the small ball. So did Berman went back to his roots. He didn't
Yep.
micromanage. The team policed themselves and he trusted his staff to make sure players went to class. And what I put as another great coaching hallmark, building a strong staff because they're an
Yeah.
extension of you.
Like we alluded to earlier, I think earlier today, it's not only the players that need to meld, it's the coaching staff,
That's right.
and like you had noted, he didn't need to micromanage. He didn't micromanage. The team policed themselves, and he trusted his players and then the players used the movies Gladiator and Braveheart as battle chair.
No, but just like but when you and like he was bringing up those movies, like Skip said, I worked really hard at all the video stuff. I'm very proud of that. I made the time. I had time for everybody and everything. A lot of coaches work hard. I just used the 24 hours differently. Be the star of your own movie.
And the ABC acronym: analyze, visualize, and concentrate.
That's what you do.
Skip Skip made that huge.
Yes.
Back to his famous quote: anything you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe, and enthusiastically act upon absolutely must come to pass.
That's right.
And without him being such a visual guy, like call back to I think it was the 91, he had a spot on his shelf where he wanted that championship trophy to be.
That's it.
And he got it there. That's how he wanted it, And in 2000, LSU set the school record for batting average,
Other records include hits, slugging percentage,
slugging percentage,
strikeouts pitch.
which I think that record held up until, last year or this year, but, we've got Augie versus Skip.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Like
And
you talk
Skip,
about Texas.
the best bunt defense can be a home run offense.
And like what I love about postseason sports, it don't have to be cute. Just win. I don't care at this
No,
point.
yeah,
I
exactly.
don't care at this point. Like you won
Yeah,
this, you
and
won nothing. I don't care.
yeah, and another quote: if you work too much on your weaknesses, next thing you know, you lose your strength. The bad may improve, but you're worse overall.
That hits you right there, man.
Yeah, studying for all those tests that I had to take as of late, you come back and take pre-test and you do all of this stuff. And the biggest mistake, and I made this mistake too, I was focused so much on what I got wrong and what I thought were my weaknesses that I said, oh, this is my strength. this is my strength. I don't have to focus as much on those. I would study solely on the stuff that I missed and was weaker in.
Yeah.
I would go take the test and I would do good on the stuff that I studied that was my weakness, but the stuff that was my strength had turned into my weakness. And once I finally figured out how to balance both of those to work equal parts on the strength and improve what I thought was a strength, as well as try to improve on what I thought was a weakness, that, that helped.
I think
That turned it all around right there.
that example, that illustration, it's all about not being complacent. It's so easy to look at like a weakness. Obviously, it should be corrected. But like, it's like the demonstration, like you hold up both things high. So it's like you don't want to push up the weakness, but like and let the strength drop. It's like you gotta have
Exactly.
it's that spirit of excellence that you operate in everything you do. Not perfection, but because man is not perfect, but just it's a spirit of excellence about what you do.
Exactly. Warren Morris said it, and we read it when we reviewed it when we went over the beginning of this book. Skip didn't only teach you about baseball,
Mhm.
he taught you about life. And the real title of this book should be Everything Matters in Baseball, but at the end of it, it should be in parentheses, in life.
Yeah, that's right.
Because he was so good at not only teaching baseball, but he taught life lessons.
Yes. Did an incredible job in doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he goes back to the HWA, how to win awareness. We also have TOB, transfer of blame, and talking about taking ownership, even when
Mhm.
it's your mistakes.
Yeah.
You have right here, Barbier, ownership.
We didn't come to Omaha to play it safe.
You have to take ownership. You know, Speaking of the 2000 national championship, the things that he said, and I remember this from that documentary too,
Mhm.
was he had envisioned, Brad Cressy coming up and getting the winning hit. Would it have been a single? No, he didn't. I don't think he imagined him being a single, you know,
Yes.
but he envisioned him getting the winning hit. I talked about, having the Warren Morris walk off as my ringtone
Yeah.
for a little while. Another ringtone that I had was the call when Cressy singled in the winning run
Yeah.
for the 2000 World Series. Yeah. And I think the call went a little something like the stretch by Morris in the pitch, swung on, or something like that. Single.
Mhm.
Terrier rounds third. He heads for home, and he is safe. Tigers win. Tigers win. You know?
It's was a great quote from this section. Wasn't how Cressy did on his first three at bats. It was the last one.
Exactly.
Like
It's the visualization that Skip used and talked about for everything.
so they just won't give up. Of all of the national championships, this is the best one.
Winning his fifth title of the decade. I think Jay can get it done.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I think Jay will has the potential to win 10. 10, I feel like 10 is his not his ceiling, but
So it has two already. Two in what 4 years?
2 in 4 years.
A great pace. I could see 6 to 8 because they put their resources in the sport.
Yeah.
So it's like 6 to 8. Yeah, I can definitely see it.
I want to say, I don't want to say that give anybody a ceiling because, especially with this sport, but I feel, max Jay can win 10, and that could be 10 more. He could finish his coaching career up at LSU with 12,
Yeah.
you know, or that could be 10 total, but he is on a great pace at this point in time to match Skip with 5 in a decade.
Yeah, man. I just and like I said before, it's just when you have the foundation laid, it's easier to visualize that because like what Skip did was unreal because like they didn't have not only did they have a great baseball program, the athletics program had a drought of high profile championships. So
Exactly. Yeah. But, they win that one in 2000, and they come back and, get announces it's his final season.
They said,
There's a lot of cool stuff he did.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
they said LSU baseball was at the height of the excitement in the 2001 season. We just won our fifth natty. Our coaches committee was never stronger. I wanted Skip to keep coaching for obvious reasons, but I understood he was ready, which is obvious from Richard Lipsey, who was obviously Baton Rouge business tycoon, basically. But he was a close friend of Skip who
Yep.
helped start the baseball coaches committee to help the program. Richard Lipsey got money.
Yeah. And it was, 3 weeks after his last title win is when he announced that 2021 would be his final season.
Yep.
And I remember that as a kid, when they lost that last game,
Mhm.
I remember being upset, not really understanding the game at that point, you know, but upset. And I remember saying, how could they do that to this man? Talking about his team, like how they didn't play hard, harder, but in 2001, we were what, 6 or 7? 7-year-old me, 6-year-old, 7-year-old me was like, how could they do this to this man who was the greatest of all time?
Because in '93, so this 2001 season, I was, yeah, 7. Because we were gonna be 8 later that year. I was gonna be 8 in later
I was,
2001. Yeah,
yeah, I was 7 years old and I was turning a month later, I would be 8, you know, but I was like, how could they do this to this man? And, they set the Louisiana attendance record for an outdoor baseball game, which, we would later crush by 2000.
yeah,
But at the time, in a loss to Tulane at Zephyr Field in Metairie in front of 11,669.
yeah. It's just it was a very unique year. The LSU bus breaks down on the highway. Speed limit was 70, but people were slowing down to see it. That was actually Berman outside. They said like, which obviously it was.
Yeah,
Bus rides are what made me athletic director. It'll get people out of coaching. That was funny. Oh my gosh, man.
but yeah, we got Jim Wells quoting on Skip, every pitch counts, everything counts.
Obviously one of
You
the
know,
noteworthy things about the chapter, the gifts to Skip, obviously his tour, basic retirement tour, he had a $750 crystal cup. Now that's
hmm
precious. $150.
tickets for a Caribbean cruise.
There you go.
You know, just so many. He's what made college baseball today college baseball.
Yeah.
You know, especially around here, he's what made it what it is today.
You
And
need
there's
that
no other way to
visionary.
say it.
You
It's
need that
just
visionary. That's why it's
yeah,
important.
yeah. I mean, he made it what it is today. And the Tigers slide in the regular season cost them a potential super regional at the bottom.
Yeah.
And it was clear that the Tigers didn't have that level of a team coming in. But like I said, little 7-year-old Justin was, like, why? Like, why couldn't they do? You know,
Yeah. So
why couldn't they do this?
like Ryan Terrio said, like we had some dues, but in order to win it all, it takes more than that. The team has to gel, like you said before, and create a winning culture. Never say die. It just didn't happen. We were super talented in '01, but I didn't like the vibe neither did Skip.
Yeah. And then Skip went on to say, there were a lot of great players that I had, but they weren't always competitive. You know, that kind of stuff matters to me. We have a Forrest Gump team, a box of chocolates. We never knew what we were going to get.
Listen,
I mean, you had all the pieces up. You just never could put them together. And that just stayed through LSU sports from that 2001 season to today.
dude.
You could have a great team at LSU, have all the talent in the world, but they're like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, it's just, obviously, you have the resources in place, but, and granted, like we said before, it's very difficult to win a championship. So the success that they've had in football is a testament to how great of a program they are historically, but they've left a lot on the table. Baseball has left their share on the table. Women's basketball has left their share on the table. Listen, I've never been an athlete at that level, so I know I can't, I know it's difficult. but it's like at the
Yeah.
same time, I
They
mean, you've
had
had your chances.
for the All-Star, yeah, for the All-Star game this year for the MLB, they had a video. They asked pitchers and some position players like Paul Skeens. You know, the average fan gets 100 at bats off of you. How many hits are they getting? Paul Skeens was quick to say none. A bunch of the pitchers were quick to say none. One of the position players was like, "Look, no offense, but none. I do this for a living, and it's hard enough for me to get a hit."
Right.
And as fans, I think, as fans, we play, little league ball growing up. Some of us are lucky enough to go to high school and play, and that's as far as we get. And we think, oh, they should be hitting the ball and pitch and catch, throw strikes. I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Sometimes when I'm there, I yell, and a kid is struggling. I'm yelling, just throw a strike, just throw it down the middle. You know. But as you get older and you actually think about it, you don't think about it in that moment, but as you think about it, it's hard for them to come together.
Yeah, they call it the sport of failure for a reason. It's a beautiful game,
Yeah,
historic,
I mean,
traditional game, but it's hard to perform
yeah,
in that sport, especially offensively.
yeah. Like it's another one of his books that I think I told you about. He put it on. He made like an audio book
Mhm.
about it on Apple because you can't find it in print and for less than $130, but you can get it off of Apple Music for $9.99. And he says, it's the sport of failure. Where else would you take a guy batting, you know, three something? He's only successful 33% of the time.
No other
You
sports
know,
you take it.
yeah, stolen bases. I forgot who it was. Stolen base leader at the time, the guy with the record, was only 52% successful. That's a failing rate anywhere else, but in baseball, that's amazing.
Yes.
But one thing that really stuck out to me about Skip's coaching career, you know, they go in and they lose to Tulane in an extra innings game 4-3. I'm sorry, it says LSU beat Tulane 4-3 in 13 innings,
Yeah, Tulane
and
won the
we
final
dropped the
two.
final
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one thing that Skip did after we lost, you know, he consoled his team and everything, but he went over to the Tulane dugout and told their coach, "Let me talk to you players. Let me paint a picture of what it's like in Omaha. I've been there. Let me tell you guys what to do and what to expect and how to, that's what made him a great coach."
Had the cachet and had the respect, just I said, because that's something he didn't have to do, even though and I'm not making this about me. I mean, listen, I mean, my time is done. So you need to see this for yourself.
Exactly. He was the greatest coach of that era for sure, and he's the greatest coach of all time in my opinion. And yeah, and he coached his final game, had a loss in his final game. He could have made that moment all about him, but he took that time to go to Tulane, the winning team, and was like, "Let me tell you how it is, what you can expect, and what you should do." And that's how he ended his career.
Yeah,
And then he took over as LSU's athletic director on July 1st
that's
and
it.
did a lot of good things. And like I had alluded to earlier, okay,
Yeah,
we talked about Smoke, Wally Ponus. His sudden death is what I think derailed Smoke Laval's coaching career at LSU.
yeah,
I don't think they ever got rid of it. I mean, not rid of it, but I
yeah.
don't think they ever got over that as a program.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Yeah, like sudden, like yeah, just
Yeah.
Johnny Thibodeau died, from a car crash like 3 years later, like several years later. It's a challenging time for that era. It's just
Then, in 2012, Skip lost his daughter
yeah,
to cancer. in 2021, Cedric Harris's son died at 14 with an all-terrain vehicle accident in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And in March, Miss Sandy died, Skip's wife.
Mhm.
Just a lot to take in
Yeah.
for that man. One thing I wish they would bring back though, and I know it was after 2020, it was a financial strain on them, but especially with the Zephyrs, because I will never ever call them that other name.
I mean, either.
Let me stop before I get on a
Then
tangent with that.
stop.
I know, I know that them losing that field in Metairie,
Yeah.
where they would hold that Wally Pontus game every year. Losing that was a big hit on them, but I wish they would bring those games back because it was just a good reminder of the past.
Yeah.
How you never know when your time is coming. But Skip, all-time great. His coaching career was. I mean, there's a reason why they wrote a book about this man and they did that documentary.
It's an unparalleled career. Just the way he saw things, the way he wanted his staff and his players and his fan base and his athletic department to see things. Somebody had to start it. You know what I mean? Somebody has to be the
Yeah,
trailblazer. Now it's on the other.
somebody has to start it, and we're gonna. What you were gonna say?
I would say somebody has to start it, and it's up to us from that point to take it and run with it.
Yeah, and he did some things as athletic director that were out there that only he could get done at LSU.
Yeah.
Like the football tickets. The way they
That's
do the football tickets is you pay your football tickets, your ticket cost, and then you have a donation fee attached to it. So instead of paying my football tickets cost me $700, 700 and something because they went up, and then I have to match that with the donation fee. So my tickets end up being double, so for football. And then you have the RV stuff that he did. We'll get into that later. But, just financial wise, he was always so good about the financial part. He was like they called him when they was in. He knew how to get the stuff done.
For sure.
He was how do I say this? It was a circus and he was the ringleader.
Very great cop. Excellent cop.
He knew how to do from a promotion. He knew the game of baseball, but he also knew the promotions. He knew what was going to get. He knew what it was going to get bums and seats. Not only that, he knew how to make sure you knew what was going on when he got you in those seats.
Yeah.
It
It goes back to his communication with the fans during his coaching career. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I'll talk about this later. I'll look it up to make sure I get it perfect.
Oh, yeah.
But they put him in just one of the things that made him think is his love for the game of baseball is what made him a great coach. In his Hall of Fame speech, he talked about what made baseball the greatest game ever. And I will, like I said, later on when we finish up this book series, I'll have found that and I'll make sure I write everything down so I can get that quote right.
There you go.
Yep. But that'll do it for this edition of the Just in Time podcast. Yeah.
So one of our classmates back in the day did it so effortlessly because he would do it in
Yeah, he was.
like Anthony Doma. I think it was like
Yeah.
it was like
He'd
he did
sit
it
there
like
and do it
the whole
he'd do it a
class.
whole class period and not even, he would take his notes and then he would go back right into it.
I was like, he did it so effort. I was like, man, because I would have to stop and bend the fingers, like readjust the pen, bend it, then
Yeah.
turn it.
But, like we say, have a good morning, a good night, whatever you're going to do, just
There
make
you
it a
go,
good
brother.
one.
There you go, brother.
This has been the Just in Time podcast.
Always
With
on time,
Will
brother.
Cochran.
Yes, sir. Peace.